Welcome to the Unconventional Ministry podcast, where the conversation is about fresh ideas and innovative approaches. In this episode, we are talking about a fresh idea of cultural adaptability in a multicultural world with TCKs, that's Third Culture Kids. Welcome. This is the Unconventional Ministry podcast, where the conversation is about fresh ideas in ministry, innovative approaches, and collaborative efforts. I'm your host, Dennis Wiens, Vice President for Ministry Partnerships at SAT7 USA. My guest today is Brooke Wiens, who grew up in Africa, and the privilege for me today is have my daughter, Brooke, on this podcast as a guest. Brooke is an emergent bilingual teacher in North Kansas City schools, a traveler, learner, coffee drinker, global thinker, and a TCK. So, Brooke, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dad. It's an honor to be here.
It's great to have you on, and you're also a board member of Interaction International, which works with TCKs. So you've been a TCK, now you're working with TCKs. Let's start by telling our listeners, what is a TCK?
So to start with, I would say that a TCK is a child who has spent a significant amount of time during their developmental years outside of their passport culture. And they are living abroad for a period of time and are trying to formulate kind of who they are culturally. They don't necessarily belong in their passport culture entirely, and they also don't fit entirely with their host culture, as we like to call them. And so there's kind of this third culture that's created in the middle. And I would say that in my experience, I would say it hasn't been a stark contrast and clearly defined, like I'm fully my passport culture and I'm not fully my host culture. It's been this kind of ebb and flow of this third culture in the middle that kind of creates that third cultural perspective as a TCK.
So I was reading online about TCKs and their high global mobility of the TCK experience can affect them in less than positive ways and facing unique difficulties in the development of individual identity. And I thought it was quite interesting that these struggles may include difficulties in experiencing a sense of belonging, enculturation, the problem with identity, grief and loss, and even with your faith. Many in the field of counseling believe TCK's weak sense of belonging results from not having sufficient contact experience with their home culture or with their new third culture. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I think different families and organizations choose to do it differently and highlight the need for international families to come back to the U.S. or their home country to establish that connection. I think in 2022, communities and global businesses are doing things a lot differently than they did in the past. And so for me, in my experience, my family came back to the U.S. every 4 years so that we could get to know family members, so that we could kind of adjust and adapt and not be so completely clueless as to what North American culture was like, even though I will say a lot changes in the world in 4 years in your host or passport culture.
I know in my upbringing, I was raised as a missionary kid. Now we call them third culture kids. And then, of course, Brooke raised in West Africa as well. Some of these things that are listed as challenges, I think we all go through. And your work with Interaction International works with specifically some of these challenges that TCKs have, even though they have a lot of advantages and exposure to cultures. The reentry back into North America, you guys really help them bridge that in many different ways.
We do, and I will say that I am a product of some of the Interaction International programming. I went through a reentry seminar back when I graduated from high school 25 years ago, almost to the day.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know. So I went through one of their reentry seminars out in Colorado Springs at the time, and it really was a huge benefit for me in just figuring out how to process this new life that I was in. I think they took us to a bank and taught us how to set up a checking account, because that was a very foreign concept coming back from West Africa and the developing world. And so we just did a lot of sessions on building trust and trying to figure out who we were and our identity and where we would belong and fit. And so to be able to be on their board and to represent them now is kind of a full circle moment for me in giving back. And I truly believe in their mission. I am a product of their mission and organization. And I just want to make sure that the word is out that, Interaction is an organization that is really here to help the missionary community and those living abroad to help support their kids.
I know when I came back after being raised in Africa for college in the U.S., I don't think there were reentry seminars that I was aware of. We were kind of on our own. I think what helped me is coming back, I was involved in a very active youth group in a local church, and that was kind of my bridge back to reentry into North America. And so it's very different maybe than what TCKs and missionary kids or business kids. I was reading that, TCK isn't only the mission community or the Christian nonprofit or the Christian NGO community, it's even business community. And there's 220 million TCKs now around the world, which really more than what I was thinking. But of course, here we're talking about the Christian nonprofit, the mission community, and reentry back into North America. Where can people learn more about what the work of Interaction International? I'm sure there's a website and Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, all the things. So you can find more information about Interaction International on the website at interactioninternationalintl.org. That's Interaction, interactionintl.org. They're also on Facebook at Interaction International, as well as on Twitter at Interaction International, spelled the same way as their Facebook page or their internet.
As you think about Interaction International, what are some ways that people could get involved with this ministry with TCKs?
One of the things that people can do that will make a huge impact for families across the world is to get on the Interaction International webpage, click on the Give button in the top right corner, and scholarship a TCK or two for their reentry seminars to help them adjust back to their passport culture. You could also donate to the general fund, which helps support ongoing ministries and programming throughout the U.S., and that'll be broadcast internationally as well.
And the TCKs that attend these reentry seminars are heavily subsidized. So by giving to the organization, you're helping to support many families who struggle maybe to send their children in reentry, send them through those workshops and those seminars.
Correct. Yeah. We would welcome any kind of participation and partnership with us as we continue to do kingdom work and help young adults re-enter their passport culture.
And I noticed on the website there's ways you can volunteer. There's also ways to get involved with the ministry. And you're also looking for an executive director. So get on the website and check out different opportunities that they have for various positions as well. So great way to invest time and resources and steward some of your resources towards a really important cause and helping TCKs in their reentry back into North America. Your day job is a teacher in an elementary school. Talk to us a little bit about your work there in the elementary school. I know your title is Emergent Bilingual Teacher in North Kansas City, but your elementary school is kind of a unique school. Tell us a little bit about what makes your school unique.
So I have the great privilege of working at the most diverse elementary school in the entire state of Missouri. We have 25 countries and 23 languages represented, K through 5. And so a lot of our families that are coming are from all over the world and from all different kinds of contexts. Some are leaving war. Some are looking for a better life. Some have family that they're coming here to reestablish with. And in a lot of ways, there are some unique similarities between my experience. While I have never experienced war, I have experienced life in this country when I didn't feel like I belonged in this country or I didn't know how I would fit. And so to be able to sit in an intake interview with a family and tell them, you know what, I understand how confusing it is when you go to the grocery store and there's like 5 million cereal choices and how overwhelming that can be. I understand when you're not quite sure of the traffic laws, because in a lot of countries around the world, there are no traffic laws. And so, being able to connect with the families in that way kind of reassures them and helps them to be seen and identified in the school and in our community. And so for me, it's been a really great fit. 25 years ago, if you had told me that I would be in the U.S. Working in an elementary school, I would have told you absolutely not. That is not where I will be. But yet God has a plan and a very good sense of humor in helping establish and place people where he wants them. So
in a sense, the world has really come to you. I know you've mentioned in the past students that are coming, families coming from war areas, areas of hostility, a lot of areas of maybe internally displaced peoples like Syria, Iraq, and some of those countries, that the trauma of hostility and those environments you see played out in the classroom here in the Midwest.
Yeah, I think as long as we're doing our best to provide places that are safe, where kids feel safe, where they can feel like they can talk about some of the things that they've seen or their family has seen, kids will tell it to you like it is. They're very honest. And so I really feel like my job not only is to teach English, but first and foremost, but it's to connect with families, share my story along the way, and, pray more than anything that connections are made and that there's opportunities for conversations to grow deeper. Families want to be involved with their kids' education. Kids, at the end of the day, kids just want to be seen. They want to be heard and they want to feel like they belong. And I think if we're honest with ourselves as individuals, isn't that what we all want? And so whether they're coming from another country, whether they're TCKs, whether they're refugees and immigrants, like it's all this beautiful convergence of the world in our little community.
As we wrap up our conversation today, what would you say you want the listener of this podcast to understand in terms of third culture kids coming from around the world to your school here in Kansas City?
I would say I would encourage people to really pay close attention. I think in my own experience, I wanted to fit in so badly, especially in my early years in the U.S. I wanted to fit in so badly that I spent a lot of time being what I kind of refer to as a social chameleon, right? Like anybody from the outside looking in would have been like, oh, she looks like an American. She speaks like an American. She's happy. She's positive, all these things. But nobody ever stopped to ask me any questions about like my home and my background and where I came from. And there were some, but that's really, at the end of the day, all I wanted was someone to see that I was not just this one way, but that I had all of this cultural rich and depth to me from my experiences overseas. And so I would say to people listening, if you know a TCK, plug them into Interaction. We have a lot of online programming that they can connect with wherever they are in the world, through our Facebook, through our Twitter feed. But Facebook would be the place to connect them first and foremost. And I would say, too, invite TCKs into your home. Ask them questions. Tell them that they're seen and that they're heard. And if you're a business person or a person with influence in the business world, I would highly encourage you to interview and hire TCKs for your company. They are globally adaptable. They're problem solvers. They think differently. That's a whole nother podcast for another day. But my challenge would be hire them, see beyond maybe their articulation and their interviewing skills, and give them a shot because they will be a great asset to your team.
Okay, and check out Interaction International. Just Google Interaction International, and they have a website with a lot of resources. They're also on Twitter, and they're also on Facebook as well. And so again, Brooke, thank you for taking time out of a busy schedule as a school teacher to join the Unconventional Ministry podcast. Great to have a TCK contribute to this fresh idea and innovative approach. We see so many people coming back and reentry into America, and to understand where they're coming from and to understand how we can help is a great idea. So thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you. And I would say, too, if you're a TCK and you're listening, as we stated earlier, there are a couple million of us. So just know you're not alone and that you're seen and you have great skills and resources and assets to add.
In our changing world, there are more ways than ever to do ministry. Sat7 as a broadcast media ministry is changing how ministry is done. Through innovative approaches, collaborative efforts, broadcast satellite television, web streaming, and social media, Sat7 is making a difference. Visit Sat7 online today at sat7usa.org to learn ways you can be a part of this kingdom work. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends. If you know of an unconventional ministry approach, please introduce us. We'd like to have them on as guests. Thank you again for joining this episode of the Unconventional Ministry Podcast.